Today's title is, or was originally, Do You Know the Path You Walk? And it's about Joshua chapter 6. But the more I got to thinking about it, I also got to thinking another compromise, another title could have been No Compromise. And I was going to spell it little k, capital N-O, little w. And both titles actually fit, and we're going to see that as this develops. So, starting with chapter 6, verse 1, reading through verse 5, it says, Now Jericho was securely shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, See, I have given Jericho into your hand, its king and the mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all you men of war. You shall go all around the city once. This you shall do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. But the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. It shall come to pass, when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, that all the people shall shout with a great shout. Then the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up every man straight before him. And this is the fall of the wall of Jericho. We know how the battle goes. They win. That's pretty cool. And if you think about it in a goofy way, which of course I did, this is the very first recorded shouting match. And at the end of the shouting match, God wins, Jericho loses. It's an interesting situation because if you think about what they were told to do, they weren't told, okay, here's how you're going to lay siege to Jericho. They were told all the men of war plus 7 priests with 7 ram's horns are going to march around the city one time. And they're going to do that 6 days in a row. And then on the 7th day, they're going to do some more marching. And then they're going to make some noise. And then the walls are going to go down flat, and they're going to all go straight in. That doesn't sound like an attack plan. But that was God's plan. They followed God's direction. And because of that, the walls come down and they take Jericho. Now, there's another time when they're very near this spot, and it occurs previously. And it's a bit of an interesting story, especially if you know what happens afterwards. So we're going to be looking at Numbers chapter 22, initially beginning with verse 1, just so we get a little bit of a context for it. Then the children of Israel moved and camped in the plains of Moab on the side of the Jordan across from Jericho. Now Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was exceedingly afraid of the people, because there were many, and Moab was sick with dread because of the children of Israel. So, the person that's going to be contacted, Balaam, is not an Israelite. He's a Moabite. The Israelites have come out of Egypt. They're heading towards the promised land. This is still part of their wandering. They've already destroyed others. The king of the Moabites is afraid. So he gets a person who is known for being able to talk to the gods. That's Balaam. So if we jump down then to verses 5 through 6, it says, Then he sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pereth, which is near the river in the land of the sons of the people, and called to him, saying, Look, a people has come from Egypt. See, they cover the face of the earth and are settling next to me. Therefore, please come at once. Curse this people for me, for they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. So, for whatever reason, the king believes Balaam has the power, has the authority to call down blessing or call down a curse. And that because of that, he hopes to be able to do something about the Israelites through Balaam. Then down in 27 through 29, this is where it gets interesting, or humorous, depending on how you look at it. Balaam was told by God, don't do it. You're not to go and curse my people. And Balaam tells the messengers, sorry, God has spoken. I can't go with you. And they say, well, wait. We're willing to offer you a lot of gold. And he says, no. Let me go talk to God again. God says, no, you don't go with him. He comes back. I can't go with you. And they try to convince him a third time. The third time, God says, okay, go with them. Now, you need to think about this just a little bit before we start into 27. If God speaks directly to Balaam, and I'm not saying that in an if maybe it happened. I'm saying if that's what's taken place the first time, Balaam didn't really need to go back to God a second time to find out, did you change your mind? He knew God had said, you're not going to curse these people. The reason why Balaam keeps going back and asking God again is he really wants the money. He doesn't care. These aren't his people. He's hoping God is wishy-washy and willing to change his mind. But God doesn't. When God says on that third time, go with them, truth is, God is mad. And he's mad with Balaam. So when he tells him to go, the interesting thing occurs, starting with 27. And when the donkey that Balaam is riding saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. So Balaam's anger was aroused, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, what have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? So this has already happened 2 times before this. And Balaam said to the donkey, because you have abused me, I wish there were a sword in my hand, for now I would kill you. I have to wonder if Jonah was a descendant of Balaam, because this guy's attitude sort of reminds me a bit about Jonah. Jonah's the one that gets all frustrated because he can't have his way. Kill me now, Lord. I just can't take it that you're going to show mercy to these people. Balaam's talking to a donkey that has talked to him. Balaam hasn't gotten the clue. You went off into that separate room to pretend to talk to God, and God talked to you and tells you, don't go. And you realize you were sort of probably pushing the point with God, because you asked him 3 times. And on the 3rd time, he says, all right, go. And God gets upset. So he lets the donkey know, yo, there's a guy right in front of you, donkey, with a sword. And the donkey's not stupid. The donkey stops. And Balaam gets upset and whacks the donkey. And so the donkey goes on. And again, the angel with the sword is in front of him. And the donkey does what he does and is not going to go forward. And he ends up sort of squishing Balaam's foot against a wall. And Balaam gets mad and gets off and hits the donkey. 3rd time it happens, the donkey just decides, well, I'm not going to get hit again by crushing his foot, so I'm just going to lay down. And he hits the donkey anyways. And the donkey says, what are you doing this for? The donkey says, Balaam heard the Lord 3 times. The donkey talks to him, tells him what he ends up seeing. His eyes are open. He sees the angel there with a sword. When he gets to the place where he's supposed to curse Israel, he goes, let me go and find out what the Lord would have me to say. And the Lord lets him know, you in no uncertain terms are not cursing these people. These are the words you're going to say to bless my people. And the king decides, well, that didn't work because that's not what I wanted you to be saying. I can only say what the Lord says, Balaam tells him. And so he's like, okay. Well, maybe it's because we're up here in the hills, and maybe if we take it down to the plain where maybe God's the God of the hills. So let's go down the plain. Maybe you can get away from this God and you can curse this people for me. And of course, Balaam can't. And God tells him, you will not curse this people. So he blesses him a second time. And the king gets really frustrated. So the king takes him someplace else. Well, this time Balaam finally gets a clue. I'm not supposed to curse these people. I've already been talked to God by 3 times before I came here. I got talked to by the donkey. And now every time I go to curse these people and I go to find out what I'm supposed to be able to say, hoping probably he can find the spot where God isn't because he wants that money. He blesses them 3 times. You think, or hopefully you would think, Balaam's gotten a clue. God is real. God has spoken to him. A donkey has spoken to him. But even though on the 3rd time he doesn't bother even going to God, he just out and out blesses the people, you need to know where Balaam was really at. And we find that in Numbers chapter 31, verses 15 and 16. And Moses said to them, have you kept all the women alive? Look, these women caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to trespass against the Lord in the incident of Peor. And there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. Balaam told the Moabites, you want to take care of Israel? Get them to go against their God. Send your women in among them, and they will compromise themselves with your gods. And then God will turn against them. And that's exactly what happened. God caused a plague to be among them. But think about the craftiness of Balaam. He didn't curse the people directly. He told the Moabites, if you want to get God to curse them, get them to go against God. Balaam wasn't like Joshua. He wasn't following God because he respected and revered God. He was following God because, well, if God's talking to me, I better do what God says. If God's got the donkey talking to me, I better do what God wants me to do. If God says I gotta bless him, I gotta bless him, well, I guess I've gotta bless him. But oh, by the way, if you want to know how to get away with it, get him to be bad relative to God, and then God will curse him. Balaam wasn't trying to follow God. Balaam was submitting when he felt he had to. But you know what? If I can get away with it, here's what you should do. Balaam was compromising himself when he knew the truth. The truth was there was a God. The truth was that God was so powerful, he can make a donkey talk in a way that man can understand. And yet, Balaam was out for what Balaam thought he could get away with, and he didn't care really about what God had to say unless God was talking to him directly. Now, I want you to keep that kind of thought in mind. Think about the fact that Balaam did what he felt he had to do, but when he thought God wasn't looking or wasn't going to be looking at him over the issue, Balaam was going to act the way Balaam was going to act, which wasn't for God. So, like I said, hold on to that thought. I'd like to also give you a totally different kind of thought right now before we jump into the New Testament. And this thought doesn't have to do with the Bible, it has to do with baseball. When I was a little kid, I liked playing baseball. So much so that I took a wiffle ball, tied it up with a curtain cord, hung it in my basement, and all winter long I'd go down in that basement after I'd chop up whatever wood we needed for upstairs and hauled that wood upstairs, and I got a fire going in the fireplace that was in the basement. I'd get out my baseball bat, it was a 30-inch long Louisville Slugger, and I'd smack that ball. And because it was on a curtain cord, there was a little bit of give to that cord. So that ball would go zipping forward and it'd shoot straight back. And I'd smack that ball again. Every time that ball came back, I'd smack it again. I'd spend an hour to 2 hours every day in my basement beating the tar out of that wiffle ball, making sure every time that ball came back, I was ready to swing again. I swing again. I didn't even always go back for a full swing. If I was swinging so fast, it was like bam, 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 bam. Hitting that ball again and again for 2 hours straight every day, all winter long. So that year, come baseball season, if that ball was anywhere near the plate, I was hitting it. So if the ball was 2 feet over my head, my bat's long enough. I was hitting it because I wasn't going to let them walk me. If they were going to try to brush me back by hitting me with the ball, I stepped out of the batting box, swung, and I hit it even though it was destined for my body to begin with. At the end of the season, I had the league's highest batting average ever. My batting average was 875. That means 1 out of 8 times, I'll tell you right now, I struck out. And it wasn't because I missed the ball every single time. I usually struck out with about 6 to 9 foul balls. And then finally I missed on the last. But yes, I definitely struck out 1 out of 8 times. The other 7 times, I hit that ball no matter where it was coming across or even not coming across that plate. The next year, they goofed up and lost my registration. I was supposed to go up to the next league, but because they couldn't find my registration, they left me on the team I'd been on the previous year. Finally, they decide, well, we got to put you on a team. We'll put you on the same team as your brother. And my brother's actually younger than me, but he was going up to the next league the same time that I was. So when I got to that next league, the coach didn't want to play me because I didn't get to practice with the team until the game started. So I was a catcher, I was an outfielder. In the previous league, I also played first or third base, but they weren't about to put me on first or third. They put me out in the outfield, and when they were desperate for a substitute catcher, I was catcher. They only had to play you for 3 innings in the next league up. That way you got 1 at bat. There were only 2 games that I was in there longer than 3 innings. One of those games was because the catcher was out sick, so I got to play all 9 innings that game. In another game, one of the other outfielders got hurt, and I got to play for 6 innings. At the end of the season, when they made the announcements and they're going through and all the special designations on each team, they got to my team. This year we have a very special individual. He got not only the highest batting average on his team, he's gotten the highest batting average we've ever had in this division. 539 batting average. Ricky Kelley. And my coach is like, what? And now the statistics guy didn't appreciate the way the coach had treated myself or a couple of the other boys. So he was grinning from ear to ear. Oh yeah! He had the best batting average of the entire team. He's the only kid in the league that hit off the 3 fastest pitchers. I could do that because of the time I spent practicing in a basement every day throughout the non-baseball season. I know I went a little bit long on that, but I want you remembering that with the passage I'm going to read to you now out of 2 Peter. It's from chapter 1. And like I said, think about both of those things. About Balaam and me with a baseball bat. 2 Peter chapter 1, beginning with verse 3, it reads, "As his divine power has given to us all things that pertain to life and godliness, through the knowledge of him who called us by glory and virtue, by which have been given to us exceedingly great and precious promises, that through these you may be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust, but also, for this very reason, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, to virtue knowledge, to knowledge self-control, to self-control perseverance, to perseverance godliness, to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness love." He gave a list of instructions of what we are to do as Christians. That list of instructions makes a whole lot more sense than walk around the walls. Do it again. Do it again. Do it for 6 days. On the 7th day, do it 7 times. And then make a lot of noise. You have to scratch your head on that first set of instructions, but you know what? They were from God and they worked. There's no scratching your head on the list of instructions I just read. Those instructions weren't just a simple walk around the wall. Add to your faith virtue. To virtue, knowledge. You're still adding. To knowledge, self-control. To self-control, perseverance. To perseverance, godliness. To godliness, brotherly kindness. To brotherly kindness, love. You're building. And I'd like to tell you another really brief story from the Old Testament. I'm not even going to turn to it. Where God tells a king who's on his deathbed, through the prophet, he tells him, take the shafts of the arrows and whack them against the floor. And he whacks it only 3 times and quits. Why'd you quit? I didn't tell you to quit. Because you only did it 3 times, that's how many times you'll defeat the enemy. And then after that, you'll be defeated. We weren't told, just do this one thing and you'll be good. We're told to add and add and add. And it's not a situation where he tells us, oh, and then you'll finally be done. Because you can always get better and better at self-control. You can always get better at brotherly love. You can always get better at godliness. And now, just to put the icing on the cake, I'd like you to hear verse 8. For if these things are yours and abound, or in a different translation, increasing, you will be neither barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. If these things are increasing, if you are growing in them and growing in them and growing in them, then you will not be barren, you will not be fruitless in our Lord Jesus Christ, which implies if they're not increasing, you will be barren. If they're not growing in you more and more, you will potentially be fruitless. Think about what would have happened if instead of going around the walls or the wall all those days, if they just walked around it the first day and said, you know what, nothing happened. I quit. This isn't working. Would the walls have come down? No. Because that would not be obedient to God. That would be doing a little bit and compromising and quitting. It'd be acting more like Balaam, who knew the truth, that if there was a God, that God had the power to cause a donkey to speak, had the power to bless in a way Moab could not overcome them. He also knew the truth. If you don't follow God, you will fail. Get those people to not follow God and they will fail. But he himself wasn't going to follow God. If we are not taking serious what he has to say here in 1 and 2 Peter, and taking very serious what he has to say about what we are to be doing and growing in, so that we will not be fruitless, so that we will not be barren. If we're compromising ourselves to the world and saying, hey, I'm loving enough. Hey, I do enough good, I give. I show up almost every Sunday. I'm a good Christian compared to the world. This isn't a compared to the world passage. It's what each of us needs to be striving to be more and more and more of. Not just for ourselves. Think about every person you impact in life. Your spouse, your children, your grandchildren. I could go on, but you know what? Those people are enough to shred me. Because if I am not striving to be more and more the person Peter is talking about in this passage, me being fruitless means I am showing them an example that is fruitless. I am showing them an example that if they look up to me and say, if I'm only half the man Dad was, half the man that Dad was, if Dad's a spiritual loser, means you're less than half of a loser. Because the truth is, if I'm barren and I am fruitless, it's by my choice of actions. My choice to not strive, to add to, and keep adding, and keep adding, and keep adding. There is no retirement. Retirement occurs the day I'm at home with God. Prior to that, I'm still in the battle in this world. I got to keep whacking those shafts against the ground as long as I can. I've got to keep adding and adding and adding to my spiritual life, becoming more the man that God desires me to be. Not just for myself, but for everyone I impact. If I'm going to be fruitful, if I'm not going to be barren. We cannot compromise ourselves like Balaam did. As we're going to find out next week, we cannot compromise ourselves with the world like one man did who walked over those walls, who was there when the battle occurred and didn't fully obey. We make the choice daily to choose for God. And it's a choice not just saying, well, I'm going to be a good person, not a bad person today. Peter's telling us we're choosing to become better and better for God, or we're choosing not to. You need to be making that choice in a serious way, because the consequences are serious.